All right. See here. That wasn't a bad bonus episode we put out there with John. You know what? John said something about the other capsule being kind of messed up. Some bad funk. I thought Haru cleaned it. Let me go see what's going on. Branson?
Hi, how you doing?
What are you doing in this pod?
Well, don't be mad.
Okay.
I love the Taco Machine's tacos, and the quesadillas are great, but sometimes I just get a hankering for pizza, man. And I didn't want you offended, so I'm eating the pizza, but I'm eating it in the guest pod because I don't want you to see me eating pizza.
First off, Branson.
Yeah.
I love pizza.
Oh,
but
okay.
We can do pizza anytime you want, my brother.
Great.
However,
great. Yeah.
You let the funk in here.
Oh no, that's not the reason for the pizza. The pizza didn't cause the funk.
Okay.
It's my dog Poofy.
Poofy?
Yeah. Here boy. You want some pizza crust? Who wants a pizza crust? Hey, good boy. Oh, Poofy! I told you not to do that in here.
Poofy poofed. Oh.
Now you know why he's called Poofy.
Okay.
But it's a guest pod. I mean, no one ever uses this thing anyway. I figured it'd be a great place to hide, right?
Yeah, John was here and he used the guest pod.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Clean this up. We have a report we have to give.
I feel like I have to apologize to John now.
You may have to.
Oh, okay.
General Romeo coming in, begin transmission. Should you accept it now, here's your mission. Take your pilot seat and turn on your television. Logging into the Gundam Watch. What is a Gundam? We're gonna answer that question. From back in the classics to the newer expansion. Explore the lore with Dallas Moore and Branson. Welcome to the Gundam Watch. Wayagare, come and join the Gundam Watch. Wayagare, come and join the Gundam Watch. Yamigaeru, come and join the Gundam Watch. Romeo, Gandamu, come and join the Gundam Watch. Brought to you by Geek Devotions comes another podcast to keep your feet in motion. Listening close and see what's all the commotion. Logging into the Gundam Watch. Dallas and Branson bringing their fandom to you with the passion of the veteran instructing the new. We're diving deep, but this ain't B's Views and Reviews. Welcome to the Gundam Watch.
Hello, Gundam fans, and those who would like to become Gundam fans. Welcome to the Gundam Watch. I'm Dallas, and we're so glad to have you here. And joining me today, back in the comm system, is the great, the amazing, the one who doesn't poof, Mr.
No, but my dog does.
Mr. Boykin. What's going on, brother?
Mr. Boykin's my dad.
It's a true story.
Yes. No, it's good to be back. Good to be back. Although I listened to the episode with John, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I find that John and I see eye to eye on a few things when it comes to anime.
Right?
A few other things, maybe not so much. But I was very. If someone is going to take my spot on a guest episode, I am honored that it was John. I feel like he represented my spot well.
It was good to have John on for that episode a couple episodes back. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about, we had a bonus episode that came out a couple months ago that was about the prologue for The Witch of Mercury. And we're going to encourage you guys to go check that out. We may be doing some more conversations with John down the road as The Witch from Mercury comes out. Maybe Branson will be able to join us for those conversations.
Yeah.
So, but we're super excited about today's show because, ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up today.
Yes.
The Mobile Suit Gundam trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
And this has been a journey. And but before we watch the third movie, Branson, just real quick summarize, what has your thoughts been on the series so far?
I've really enjoyed it. I think I said in my expectations on the very first episode, I said, I feel like this is going to be Voltron without the magic.
Okay.
You know? And so far that aspect of it has really played into it well. I've enjoyed seeing, it's a TV show about giant robots that fight. I mean, what's not to love about that?
Right.
But I have also very much appreciated that while there is a protagonist and an antagonist, you're never really sure from minute to minute who you're rooting for.
Yeah.
And it's not because they take villains and try to make them sympathetic. You genuinely don't know which side to root for because, as is usually the case with war, the sides aren't evenly drawn. It's not a clear cut. I find myself seeing people part of the Federation that I'm rooting for.
Right.
But then I also see people part of the Xeon Principality that I'm rooting for.
Right.
And there's this internal struggle. It's been really entertaining. I've really enjoyed it. A couple of things, we talked last episode about the whole new type thing.
Right.
And as much as I enjoyed a departure from the whole, and I think John even mentioned this on the bonus episode, this Chosen One story.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that anyone who jumped in the Gundam could pilot the Gundam.
Right.
And so the new type thing, but we discussed about what exactly new types were, and that kind of cleared the air. But so far, that's really been the only thing that and I still don't understand. Oh, what was her name? Matilda?
Yeah.
Amuro's fascination with
Yeah.
Admiral Matilda.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the guy likes older women.
I mean, there's some people that are that way.
I guess. But I mean, all in all, it's been very enjoyable. I've been very excited to get to experience this whole thing. It's been great.
Awesome, man. I'm really glad you've been on this journey with me. Going back to this, obviously, I've loved the series so far. I'm having a lot of great flashbacks watching this with you. So, all right, so we're getting into number 3.
Yes.
And let me read the description for you guys before we jump into the pods to read this, or to watch this rather. And this is Mobile Suit Gundam 3 Encounters in Space, which when I was prepping for, I forgot there's actually a video game on the PS2. I actually have it, but this is what the IMDb description says. And again, this is 1982. Amuro Ray and the rest of the White Base crew, now dominated the 13th Autonomous Corps, returned to outer space to support the rest of the Earth Federation forces for the decisive battle against the Duchy Xeon forces. Not really sure why it's Duchy.
Is that like Gucci?
I guess so. They're kind of Gucci.
Well, they're the ones with the fancy uniforms and everything, you
right?
know?
So, but that's what we're watching. We're going to be getting into, and want to encourage you guys, if you are wanting to kind of follow along the journey with us. This is currently up on YouTube, not YouTube. I apologize, but currently up on Netflix and on Crunchyroll. Now the Crunchyroll, it's the series, so you got to watch the episodes itself. It's a little bit longer trip for you guys, but if you watch it, pause this, come back to it, just make a reminder.
I actually think that once we're done with watching it for the podcast, I may go back and watch it as a series, in bite-sized chunks. I recognize that it's going to be a slow roll, because that's, from what you've told me, that's how 80s anime was, and that's what I remember of Voltron as well. But I would like to take it in bite-sized chunks instead of these super large bumps, and just have a chance to get it in nibbles. I feel like I would retain more of it that way. Yeah. And knowing how, once we've watched it, knowing how it ends might help me to look for things more specifically.
I can see that. So let me ask you this, completely throwing you out there. Would you be interested in giving us a kind of a report on the back end of that, either through our website, through an article written on our website, the GundamWatch.wordpress.com. Hopefully we'll have a domain later, or an audio conversation later.
Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Okay, cool beans. Well, that's something for you guys to look forward to down the road. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go into our pods. We're going to give you guys our expectations for this next movie, and then we're going to talk about it. Good, bad, and ugly. So let's do it, Branson.
Let's do it. Let's go.
All right, in the pod. All right, look around here. No remnants of Poofy, the dog, in this one, so that's a good thing. Gosh, cannot believe he did that. All right, expectations for this one. Again, it's been a long time since I've seen the series. I'm looking forward to some resolution to the story, because I know what's coming up with like Char's counterattack and everything like that. I know there's gonna be some things that are gonna be kind of left undone. But at the same time, from what I remember, this series wraps up pretty nicely at the end. If I remember correctly, they actually, like, the show got canceled, so he kind of wrapped everything up real quickly. So I'm kind of expecting some story beats to be rushed and thrown together. But I'm looking forward to also like the iconic scenes of like Gundam shooting up at Char and just the battles we're about to see. This was, from what I remember, a great ending to the series. So I'm super excited about this. That's about all I got. So let's start this party.
Okay, back in the viewing pod, ready to watch another Mobile Suit Gundam movie. Let me get my quesadillas going. Ooh, buffalo quesadillas. Yep, I'm going to set those on the order. All right, my expectations for movie number 3. I expect a lot of fallout. If this is the last movie of the trilogy, I expect to be this movie. This is the one that's going to pull out all the stops. This is the one that's going to go crazy. This is the one where all the suits are going to fight. We're going to see Amuro's piloting skills ramped up to the nth degree. I want to finally see some questions answered about brothers and sisters. I want to see Char's master plan. I feel like he's been up to something these past 2 movies. I finally want to figure out what that master plan is. Yeah, I guess that's the main thing I expect, is for secrets to be revealed and a whole lot of fighting to take place. You know what? I better cancel the buffalo chicken quesadillas. I think I want popcorn, because I feel like this is going to be a popcorn movie. We'll see. Either way, I think this is going to be a lot more action, a lot less story, and big reveals. So yeah, that's my expectation. Let's see how this goes.
Well, watch the movie.
I have something to say.
Okay.
The people who were in charge of making the latest Star Wars films,
Yes.
you need to go back and watch this movie. That is how you do a Star Wars movie. That's how you do it. You have spaceships and explosions and people yelling and screaming and high emotional moments. And, that was glorious. That was my favorite one.
Was it really?
Of all 3, that was my favorite one.
All right, well, show's over, guys. This is Branson's favorite. We're done for today. Thank you for being part of the Gundam. No, I'm playing. All right, so that was your favorite. Wow, well,
Yeah.
I'm encouraged by that. That was your favorite one so far. Let's kind of just walk through it together, and just out of curiosity, what made this a favorite for you?
I'll tell you what it is. In my pod, I said my expectations were 2 main things.
Mm-hmm.
I expected there to be a lot of fighting,
Yes.
because it's the end. I also expected it to be to reveal like secret plots and secret missions and things like that. And they did that.
Right.
Questions I had were answered. And then I got to see the mobile suit just tear through some robots.
Right.
I mean, it was awesome. I wish I wish I had a thing of popcorn with me, because that was the epitome of a popcorn film. You were watching it for the fun of it.
I concur with this.
And that was so much fun.
Right.
Just the fighting and everything. And I mean, there were moments where there was character development and you see some of the softer side of some of the characters, and that was good too. It was good storytelling. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're watching a TV show about giant robots fighting in space, what you want to see is giant robots fighting in space.
Right.
And of all 3, this is the movie that delivered the most of that.
Word.
I feel like I actually got what I was buying into. I mean, don't get me wrong, the other ones were good.
Right.
But of all 3 of them, this is the one that really leaned into we're a TV show or a movie about giant robots fighting in space. And they're like, we're going to embrace that.
Right.
So it was great.
Awesome. Awesome. I gotta tell you, it really was. It seemed more action packed, and I don't know if it's just because we're bringing to a conclusion. Again, this is I told you the last episode. This is called the 1 Year War, and at the end of this movie, obviously, it talked about the war was finally over. So you had to have a decisive final battle. But man, when they did it, they did it. I mean, there were I'm wondering if this was to air on television today, there would be an epilepsy warning on it because the explosions, but the way they did the battles was beautiful.
Yes.
Like if you were to remove the explosions, like the sounds of the explosions, you could orchestrate very beautiful scenes with some different stuff.
Oh yeah.
Because of the way they drew things, the way they illustrated the lights and the explosions, and everything, the way that even the trail lines of the mobile suits flying through space, and it was beautifully done.
Yeah.
And even the portions that were like maybe a little sketchy, it worked. Like it worked in that space.
You can almost do it like I watched a documentary on the very first Fantasia that Walt Disney did.
Yeah.
And one of the pieces of that movie, it said that it was an animation that was done purely off of inspiration of the music. They had a composer play the music.
Wow.
And then the animators just listened to it and drew what they saw based on what they heard. Like they didn't go to the drawing board with this is the story. And I think that with this movie, you could do that in reverse.
Right.
You could take the scenes and create a score based on what is going on. And like you said, using nothing but instrumentation, create some of these sound effects, but put it to it. It looked like a dance.
Yeah.
I felt like I was watching a choreographed dance.
Absolutely.
But it was with explosions and laser swords.
Laser swords.
Well, we can't call them lightsabers because of copyright or whatever, but you know.
But you're right, dude. And it was really, really well done. And it really got captured. We talked about how like this series does a great job of capturing the horror and the realities of war. There is to quote the title of the book, there is an art to war and a strategy to war in the way that things operate. And when you see people who are, and again, it sounds like I'm glorifying war. I'm not here.
Right.
But when you see skilled warriors doing war, there is an art to it that you can't help but appreciate the precision of things. Now, you get into the nitty-gritty thing, it's still a terrible thing. And I feel like they did a great job of showing the tragedy of war. Yeah. But at the same time, showing the beauty of skill that took place in the midst of it.
And that extends beyond the battlefield.
Right.
Like the scene where Caecilia and Char sit down at the table, and Caecilia basically says, yeah, I know who you are, and I know what you're up to, and I'm not completely against it, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut for now.
Yeah.
I mean, that was...
human chess.
Yeah, exactly. And to see that, I was like, whoa, you know, because I saw her like when she said, come sit with me. I was like, okay, she knows what's up.
Exactly.
This is when the red comet dies. And then he does it.
Right.
She's like, okay, we're going to see how this goes.
Right.
Because I don't necessarily hate what you're doing.
Right.
And I'm like, dang, okay.
Yeah. It shows like they did a great job of showing the brutality of the Zabi family, the treachery of the Zabi family.
Right.
It seems like Daiku, towards the end, was not wanting it to be as villainous as it was happening.
Yeah.
Which we saw because he was trying to do a peace treaty.
Right.
But his children had gone. In fact, they said that was not Garma. I forgot his name, but the main guy towards the end, when he related him to being Hitler.
Yeah. I actually wrote that down. It's not Gyron?
Gaiman, yeah.
Gyron, yeah.
Yeah. There's Garma and then Gaiman.
Yeah.
Garma is the one that died in the first movie.
Yeah, the one with the daughter.
Right.
Tearjerker.
No, that's Dazzle.
Dazzle.
Have the daughter. Garma is the one from the first movie who was Char's friend.
He's the one that died. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry. Too many names, folks. Too many names.
But like when he related it to his own son, to Hitler, which was interesting when they did that because that grounded it in our universe.
Yeah.
You notice he called it, he's like, wasn't he a leader in the middle era?
Yeah.
And so
that tells you this is future Earth. And I also find it interesting that this is a Japanese cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
So Hitler, while globally is terrible, he would mean something different to Japan than he would to like the United States.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm sure they hate Hitler as much as anyone else, but
in the wake of World War II, Japan culturally had a detest for what took place. They do not glorify the events of the war and what took place in it. Much like Germany. Germany had no national pride until the World Cup about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like the World Cup happened and people were shocked at the national pride that took place. It was the first time since the war that Germany was proud of themselves. And Japan at the time, this is the 80s. Well, it started being written in the 70s, really.
Yeah.
We're only looking at 30 years post reconstruction of Japan.
Right.
With and probably only, I want to say that the U.S. pulled out of Japan in the early 60s, which there was some contention about the U.S.
Well, that adds that much more context to the conversation then, because I'm going to butcher his name. Not Deku. That's My Hero Academia.
You're thinking Daiku.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Daiku, just the way he talks, like there's almost a shame in the warmongering of his children.
Oh yeah.
And if, Japan just as a nation has that kind of detest for World War II and their part in it, then you can kind of see that come out in the way he addresses Gyron.
Right.
By comparing him to Hitler. He's like, I'm not patting you on the back for your skills here.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, you're going overboard and you need to quit.
Right. Well, Tamino himself was very anti-war. In fact, that's one of the interesting things, because it's not until some of the more modern Gundam series, where I forgot who's doing the more modern Gundam series right now, but he's not necessarily anti-military. Tamino was kind of anti-military to a degree. But again, he grew up seeing the tragedy of things. Right. He saw what happened. And I think you hit on the nail. Daiku really does represent that we have gone to war and we have a level of national pride wanting to do, but he's not liking how his children have responded to what he was doing.
Right.
Which is an interesting conversation of itself of what we're passing down to our children. But again, we get unfolding a little bit more Char's conversation with, what's her name? I was going to say Cassilia, but that's not right. It was Artesia. What is Artesia's fake name? Sayla. But that whole conversation where you discovered Daiku murdered, assassinated.
Zeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that whole thing taking place there, it becomes there's a level of like, I entered in this way. And I wonder, I haven't seen any series that kind of dove into his life. I'm curious as to how Gundam Origins plays it out towards the end of the franchise, of the series, if there was a level of regret that Daiku had for what he's done.
Yeah. Well, like my first introduction to Daiku is when Garma dies. So the first time I see the guy, he's a grieving father.
Right.
So I never saw him as a conquering hero or a rising dictator.
Right.
I always saw him as a grieving father who's, I imagine in a lot of ways questioning his life decisions.
Right.
I wonder if the man that Char set out to kill even existed after Garma died.
Oh, yeah.
Because as you pointed out, he was trying to make not a treaty, Petey, Lord. Wow, okay. I can speak English. A peace treaty with the Federation when Giran blows him up.
I'm sorry. His name wasn't Daiku. It was Degwin.
Okay.
Zabi. Yeah.
Okay.
Daiku was Cecilia's and Char's father.
Oh. Okay. I thought his name was Zeon. That's why they called it the Principality of Zeon.
Zeon Daiku.
That's why. Okay. Got you. All right.
So for everyone who's been like listening, you're like, what the crap? I want to apologize.
Recuperate from your strokes, folks. It's okay. We're all right. But yeah, I mean, I never saw him as a dictator. I always saw him as a grieving father. So, and that also informs his conversation with Giran. Gyron. How do you say his name?
I can't remember now.
Gyron. Yeah. Okay. The warmongering son.
Yeah.
And just his whole attitude towards it. And knowing that Zabu kind of Zabi. The big dictator guy.
Right.
Knowing how he got there really added a new dimension to Char's character.
Yeah.
Because for the past 2 movies, he seemed very ambivalent about his own nation.
Right.
Which was weird. I mean, it was like, okay, he gets in the fights, but he doesn't get upset. He could win the fight, lose the fight. He doesn't care. I mean, he's had to retreat like 2 times, and he's like, it seems I have to retreat. Oh, darn. Well, okay, guys, pull out. Better luck next time.
Right.
I mean, like, you're losing the war for your side. What's the deal? Okay, no big deal. Yeah. But now I know, well, that's because that had nothing to do with his objective. All he was doing was positioning himself to get close to the royal family.
Are you talking about Char?
Char, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it added a new dimension to his character, and it made him a little more sinister.
Yeah.
That he manipulated the war. Yeah. Saw people, innocents, go to their deaths. Also, he could have his revenge.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, whatever, And compare that with Sayla, who is so dedicated and so compassionate. I mean, she in movie 2, she ran into a soldier from the Zeon nation,
Ramba Rao.
Yeah, and recognized her.
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to draw their fire or whatever. Go back that way.
Right.
And then you've got Char, who's like, yep, I'm going to send an entire battalion to their death so I can kill the prince. Because revenge.
Yeah. It's really, again, this is what I was telling you about when we first started the whole this whole journey. Was it is such a more complex story and intricacy between other than left and right.
Right.
Again, you have these subplots of Cecilia and Char, and they're this great example of how 2 people come from the same time, from the same place, same experiences. And you find out when you watch Gundam Origins why they go so separate. But again, they're siblings, they experience the same thing, but they went 2 different routes, and how and both of them, this is the crazy thing, both of them felt like they were doing the right thing by their family.
Yeah.
They both thought they were honoring their death of their father, but completely different ways.
Right.
Completely different ways.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings up the conversation of nature versus nurture and the whole aspect of it, and like what happened in their lives that led them to this point.
Right.
And then you have, like, again, like we brought the conversation between Char and Cecilia, where, I mean, like, she's like, all right, fine, let's play this game out. And then she just shoots her brother in the head.
Right. Well, once she figures out that he killed her dad, she's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to point the gun. And he was cool with it. Mm-hmm. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're going to shoot me in the head now. Mm-hmm. I expected as much.
Yeah.
Like, this is one messed up family.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, I was very happy to see that Shredder made an appearance on Mobile Suit Gundam. I did not realize that, He
said Shredder.
So, that's the first thing I thought when I saw her all decked out in her purple bodysuit,
right,
with the silver helmet. I'm like, it's Shredder. All she needs is the spiky shoulder pads and like a claw.
Right.
And Ninja Turtles flipping around. It's Shredder.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh. So what were we going to say?
Yeah. You were talking earlier about fatherhood and how nature versus nurture and stuff. Can we take a second to talk about Amuro's dad?
Yeah.
I've never had anyone personally in my family struggle with people suffering from dementia, where you see a personality completely degrade.
Yeah.
But based on what it has been described to me, that was the first thing that came to mind when I saw that. Because the man that he was at the very beginning of the first movie, which I assumed he died, was it well known that he survived?
It was no, that was a surprise.
Oh,
like, he didn't expect his dad to die, and that's the reason why he said basically his dad suffered oxygen deprivation. Amid, like, during the explosion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's why he had deteriorated to the point that he had.
Oh, okay. But like, he goes up, it's like, Dad, you're alive. And his response is, oh, hey, my son. Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Come on, I got something I want to give you. And he's like, he's all about the Gundam. Like, everything is the Gundam. And you see who he is and how different he is from the man. Like, he had a conversation with Bright at the very beginning where he said, if I can get this suit working, then people like my son won't have to go to war.
Right.
So like, the whole reason he got involved was to try to keep his son out of the war.
Right.
And then to see him obsessing over his son being in the war and piloting the Gundam, it's a completely reversal. And there's even a part of the scene where Amuro, like, I think he brings his dad flowers or something. and he tells him goodbye.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I've heard that described before, is that when someone that you love has dementia or has some kind of disease or something where their personality radically shifts, that it's like they're dying, but their body is still there.
Yeah.
You know, the heart is still beating, the lungs are still breathing. Someone is getting up and eating food and interacting.
Right.
But the person that you knew has died.
Yeah.
And it was really heart-wrenching to see Amuro go through that.
Yeah.
He had to grieve the loss of his father again.
Right.
Because the man sitting in that room was not his father.
Well, and then you take it beyond that, you know, in the previous movie, he basically said goodbye to his mother.
Yeah.
Because she just didn't understand what he was doing.
Right.
And he realized, I have to do this with or without your permission. Then he's thinking, he sees his dad, and again, we're reading into the context. For a moment, he goes, I have a parent who understands what I'm doing.
Right.
And now he realizes he doesn't have a parent at all.
Right.
And that was why Lala had that conversation. It's like, you have nobody. There's nobody there for you.
Right.
It's because his mother doesn't agree with what he's doing, doesn't understand. His dad doesn't even know where he's at, and then he dies at the end. She's like, you don't have anybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, he really is a soldier who's lost in war. All he has left is the war effort itself. Now, we know beyond that, he has the crew and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I feel like in this movie, since the conversation with, what's his name? The guy that died at the end of the second movie. But Bright became more of that father figure to the crew.
Yes.
He seemed more understanding throughout this entire film. He seemed to be more open to sharing his emotions and feelings. That whole thing with Mirai was kind of blossoming there.
Yeah.
And
which, on that note, Steger.
Yes.
Was he a new character for the movie? I don't remember him from the other two.
He was not. He comes in right at the end of the second movie. Right as they're about to leave Jaburo.
Okay.
He gets, hey, I've been put on your ship. It's like, cool.
All right. Because the whole thing between him and Mirai caught me off guard completely. Like, and I don't know that it was supposed to, but it did.
Right.
Because, you know, she walks off and Bright orders everyone off the bridge and like orders someone else to pilot the ship.
Right.
So that she can get off the bridge because he's trying to protect her.
Right.
And she goes, and I'm expecting her to like go to his office or something like that. And she walks into the kitchen and there's Steger eating a burger.
Right.
You know, war is going on outside and the dude's sitting there eating a burger. I'm like, okay. And he pulls out this wedding ring and I'm like, really?
Right. So with that whole situation, again, it's been years since I've watched the series.
Yeah.
I recall scenes of conversation between them where relationship was kind of building after the whole thing with Cameron.
Yeah.
There was a little bit right before Cameron shows up, sees Steger, smack Cameron in the face, which I appreciated, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
I actually wrote down in my notes, Slager's a good guy.
Yeah.
And so there was like this little small fling here and there. Bright sending her away wasn't about protecting her from the battle. Bright sending her away was because he knew that she was concerned about Slager.
Oh, okay.
And that's why he said, I can wait.
Okay, see, when he said that, I thought he was talking about because she was feeling conflicted about her emotions for Cameron, because Cameron stepped up at the very end. He was like, no, I'm going to escort these people out of here, make sure they're okay. Cameron did not handle himself well, but I think he got a bad rap because Mirai had been around Bright, and now that I know that was supposed to be a thing, Slager. They're very specific types of guys.
Right.
They're soldiers.
Right.
Cameron is an inspector on an enforced peace station. Like, no fighting is allowed at all.
But he went to that to escape the war.
See, once again, I did not know that.
Yeah, well, that's like they briefly said that within the whole conversation in the last movie, where they said that she's engaged, and she briefly says that he had gone away to escape the war, and she didn't go with him.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of the whole, like, he kind of had this cowardice about him. He didn't want to be in war. He didn't want to be in conflict. Whereas she's like, these are my people.
Yeah. Well, see, I was under the impression that he was there from the get-go, that she left that base to go be part of the war, and he was always there. That does put his character into perspective a little bit better.
Yeah.
So he's always, so that was actually a big deal that he stayed and did the
Did
fight.
he man up and escort to make sure she was safe? Again, I think it's one of those things where, yes, the dude was kind of a pansy, and there is a conversation about him not really being there for her. It's his career, which again, that's kind of a conversation within Japanese culture where it was an arranged marriage. They're supposed to just get married. She's supposed to be a good housewife. There's the Americanism of the cottage wife, basically, barefoot and pregnant all the time in the kitchen. And that was kind of the mindset of what Mirai was supposed to be, and taking care of the house while he was the typical businessman, Japanese businessman, doing business, doing work, and all that kind of stuff. But to see him show emotion, which again we talked about, I don't think we've talked about, but in Japan, showing emotion for each other publicly is a big taboo. You're not supposed to do that in Japan, and so that's the reason why, like, you saw her visibly getting like embarrassed when they're having that argument. It was very uncouth. It was very inappropriate for that to be taking place.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way they portrayed Slegger was that he was supposed to be an American.
Oh, okay.
I really feel like that's the reason why he was so brash.
Yeah.
That's why he was like,
eating burgers in the lunchroom while there's a war going on.
Yeah. Well, which I can understand that. Again, that's one of those things where in the military, when you have prolonged battles, you have to relieve your fighters for a moment to decompress, not decompress, but like eat sustenance and then go back out.
Right.
And so I was almost a mid-war shift change, if you will, while he was in there. But that's the reason why he was so brash when he punched Cameron in the face for, speaking to Homegirl the way he did.
Right.
That's the reason why he slapped her.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, he ended up hitting both of them.
Yeah. But there is this whole, like, you're not supposed to show emotion. And the fact that Cameron stepped up at the end and he was emotional about it.
Right.
He was trying to prove that he genuinely cared about her, even though he was going by just what culture told him he needed to act like.
Yeah. Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah. Some of the things I have written down. It was interesting to see. In this, you started seeing the mass production of mobile suits.
Yes.
You saw the gun cannons being mass produced. You saw the red and white. They're called GMs. They're just general mobile suits that are based off the Gundam. And you saw a few more things taking place. I don't have my list in front of me of what Gundams we saw, or not Gundams, mobile suits we saw.
I saw what DOMs are supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Not when they come out of robotic turkeys, because they want to remove fun from the world.
Right. But the DOMs, you had Char's new mobile suit that he had, which he had too.
Yeah. The one with the double blade, was that Zanzibar? Was that
No, Zanzibar was...
that was the one that Layla piloted.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the Gelgoog?
The I'll look it up.
Gelgoog. The one with the double blade.
Yeah.
That one looked cool. That was one of those fights. I was like, wow, okay, this is that was one where they said, okay, we're a TV show about giant robots in space. Let's have them duke it out. I mean,
and it was a cool suit. Like, it was really neat. I'm trying to Google it and it's not coming up. It's pulling up stuff from Gundam Seed, which is entirely different. But anyways, but you had that one. You had Char's final mobile suit that he had, which to me kind of like bridged between mobile suit and mobile armor. Like, it seemed really big to be a mobile suit of itself.
Yeah.
But I did think it was interesting that they took a design choice where typically the pilot sits in the chest. It was in the head. And I don't know if that was I don't know what the reasoning for changing that was for them, for Tomino to make that happen, or if that was just like, well, I want the head to fly off. Right. I don't know why he did that.
Yeah.
But
I remember a conversation they had where, like, he said it doesn't have legs, and she said, you're floating in space. You don't need legs.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's more form over function, or a function over form.
Right.
But that was one thing I was confused about. Why did Kycelia tell Char that it was 80% complete, and then Home Dude working and said, "Oh no, it's finished. It's ready to go."
So again, I'm wondering if that's a product of them slapping together episodes.
Okay.
And we had talked on the pre-show. This series was supposed to be a little bit longer, but it wasn't doing well. So they just summarized a lot.
Right.
And put it together for this last portion. They weren't expecting it to blow up. In fact, the first movie is why Gundam blew up.
Oh, okay.
They summarized it, and it was like the biggest viewed movie at the time in Japan. And so, but yeah, I think it was just kind of that thing. That and it didn't have legs.
Yeah.
So
right. Maybe she really wanted it to have legs.
maybe so.
Yeah.
But I feel like as far as mobile suits, they were pretty solid.
Yeah.
There was the mobile armor that Diggle was piloting in that one battle in the middle, and I wanted to point out the fact that it was during Slager's death. The movie does not do that scene justice, in my opinion. Like, it seems like they're going after her, they're going to fight, and Slager died. Oh,
yeah.
They removed some of the weight of it from the series because in the series, Slager took damage. And he knew he was going to die, so he piloted it into the mobile armor.
Oh, wow.
He knew he was dying, so he sacrificed himself, removed any opportunity of salvation to make it easier for Amuro to do what he had to do.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I said, like Slager was actually a pretty cool guy. And I kind of hate that they nerfed him a little bit in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was definitely likable.
Right.
I've been avoiding talking about it because it's like the only negative I have about the movie. But this whole psychic new type communication thing,
Right.
Still better than the Star Wars movies.
Right.
If you're gonna have something magical, forcey, that's a better way to do it.
Sure.
But I was talking with you earlier. So much of the first two movies was grounded in we're jumping into robots and we're piloting them.
Right.
And I even said there's not a chosen one Neo type thing. It's anyone can jump in the mobile suit and pilot it.
Right.
It's not like it's keyed to someone. You don't have to have some kind of special ability. They started talking about new types and how just in general they're a little bit better able to do things because of their time and space. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. You know, there's a slight advantage. But then in this movie, they just go all out. It's like, nope, we can talk to each other with our minds. We can have visions of the future. We can, have longing, lovingly eye stare contests.
They didn't have visions of the future.
Field.
They didn't have visions of the future.
I thought they had this whole, you can see things before they happen.
They could sense things were happening, but they could not see the future itself. And because Amuro made a point to say that. Because there was a scene where they were planning for the final attack.
Yeah.
Amuro goes, "Hey," and he lays out some instructions. And Bright goes, "Is this new type intuition?" He goes, "Yes, it is."
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "Can you really see the future?" And Cecilia goes, "No, he can't. We can't do that." But he had to say it that way to give everyone confidence.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not that they can see the future, but there is a sixth sense of placement of where things are.
Yeah.
Again, yes, there is the psychic connection they seem to have with each other. They seem to be able to communicate. But think about it in the fact that, again, they're in the spans of space where they're having to develop new senses to know where things are.
Right.
And within that, it developed a mindset of this will be here at this point because I can feel the traction of everything going in space around me.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think if instead of cramming it all into the third movie,
Right.
They barely mentioned it at all in the first movie.
Yeah.
Touched on it a little bit more in the second movie, like they had the academy that was specific for new types.
You're right.
But then in the third one, they just poured on all the sauce. It was like, no, we're going really weird.
Oh yeah.
I think if they'd have stretched it out a little bit more,
Right.
maybe the level to which they covered it in the second movie, cover that in the first movie,
Right.
and then take what was in the third movie and stretch it out over two movies so that it felt like it was more part of the story. Because the way they did it, it felt like, we have these movies about giant robots fighting in space, and now we're going to insert strange telepathic abilities. Why? Because we blew up all the robot suits, so now we need something else.
Yes.
So that was really my only hang up was I wish it wasn't so abrupt.
Right.
Not the introduction, but the movement into that.
I would be curious to see how you feel about it when you've watched the series as a whole.
Yeah.
because this is episode 31 through 45.
Right.
Smashed into 2 minutes or 2 hours. I
Yeah.
used to say 2 minutes. You got nothing on that.
It felt like it.
I'm really curious to see how you'll feel after you watch the series.
I'm really curious about that myself because
when I remember watching it in real time, and as the series played out, and it not feeling so jarring. In the movie, I'll give you, it felt very jarring. All of a sudden, it's like the new type ring goes off, which I get excited when I hear the new type ring. Like the new type ring goes off, and all of a sudden he's like, use the Force, Luke, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I can see it being jarring in this movie, but I don't remember that feeling of jarring when I watched the series years ago.
So maybe it was a more gradual introduction that way.
Maybe, again, 31 through 45. That's a lot to cover.
I could definitely tell that this movie tried to cover a lot in one sitting because we had a narrator.
Yeah.
We didn't have a narrator for the past two movies. It was like just knowing what I know about this movie being a series condensed.
Right.
When the narrator started talking, I was like, okay, this is going to skip over a couple of episodes.
I'm not going to lie. With the amount of time the narrator kept popping in, I kept expecting for it to break and have that savage kid going, but Grandpa, that's not how that works.
Princess Bride, this bad boy.
I half expected that the entire time. Yeah. And then I'm really curious because there were several times where they had these flashbacks where the screen went blue and there's this conversation with flashbacks of previous things. I really don't remember those when I watched the series originally. I wonder if that was some of Tamano and the team trying to summarize so many things and calls to you people. Because remember, the series came out. These movies were released a year apart from each other.
Right.
So, like, they had to remind people what they watched. I will say this. I feel like the intro dialogue, did it seem more dramatic than the previous one?
Yes.
Like, it seemed more intense. Like, they brought you into it hard.
It did. And I had to catch myself because they talked about White Base return to space.
Yeah.
And I thought that was something I had missed in movie 2. I was like, wait. Hang on. I wanted to go back and look at the old notes and be like, when I miss it. But I think that was him saying, this is why White Base is in space and not on planet Earth as they've returned.
Yeah. We saw that in the final moments of the movie. That when Jaburo was being attacked, they were escaping into space.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, there was a really interesting scene that took me by surprise. And that was when Amuro was on side 6, which was it was basically Sweden of the colonies.
Yeah.
And he meets Char Aznable. You know, the things there, and Char's clearly a Xeon soldier.
Right.
He's clearly a Fetty. But Char's like, Chill's like, hey, let me help you out.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. And Char has no idea who Amuro is.
Right.
And Amuro is going, this is Char Aznable.
Yeah.
And it clicked for me when he said it. He's never seen Char face to face. Up to this point, Char was a robot. Char was a person behind a machine. He's never looked in the eyes of his enemy before.
Right.
From that point forward, I feel like there was a shifting in the way that Amuro looked at Char even. It became more human.
Right.
Which brings up a whole other conversation about dealing with war. It's easy to fight in war with people when you don't see them face to face.
Right.
But when you humanize them, you're like, man.
Yeah.
Like,
which that harkens back to the first movie because the first time Amuro piloted the mobile suit, he choked.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking, there's a guy piloting that suit.
Exactly.
I'm about to kill a person.
Right.
I'm not destroying a robot. I'm killing a person.
Yeah. So you see this thing where Amuro's really having to, he's coming full circle, I think he got to the point where I'm just killing robots.
Yeah.
But now it's like there's a person there. And then you really see it shatter when he accidentally kills Lala.
Yeah.
Who was apparently his soulmate.
Yeah, no, that was another part of it too. Is like, okay, we spend a movie and a half going all gaga over some admiral that's like 15 years older than you.
Right.
You've got Frau Bao, who is obviously interested that you keep snubbing.
Right.
And because of one psychedelic telepathic moment, you found the love of your life right before you stab her with a laser sword.
I mean, love hurts, and so. But I mean, for how about she grows? I mean, she gets up. She ends up with Hayato later.
Yeah.
So I mean, that works out later.
Right.
I'm looking at my notes trying to see. We've covered a lot of what I wanted to talk about, all out of order.
Yeah. Right. Same here.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of this movie. What'd you think of the ending? With the final battle between Char and Amuro.
I want to first tell you you're welcome.
Okay.
That in high school I was able to allow you to live out one of the scenes of Mobile Suit Gundam. And we could have taken that a step further if you hadn't moved.
Yeah. You couldn't.
No.
I don't think we've brought that up on this show yet.
Well, we brought it up on every other show. Might as well.
For those of you who didn't know, Branson tried killing me when we were in high school.
I did not try to kill you.
He attempted to put a blade through my neck.
It wasn't broken when we started.
Yeah. Magically it became.
No, I liked it because they met face to face. That last fight felt more like two rivals battling.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was more than just there's another robot.
Right.
But we're alike.
Yeah.
And we need to see who's going to come out on top.
Yeah.
And Layla's death. It seemed
Lala's death.
Lala, sorry.
This isn't Star Wars.
That's Layla, not Leia. Lala's death at first seemed so pointless, but I'm almost wondering if that isn't the point of it.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, she gave herself up to protect Char.
Right.
But the fact that Amuro wasn't trying to hurt her,
mm-hmm.
but killed her anyway, again, plays into that whole war thing.
What is the sense of war?
Right. Char's final blow against Kycelia
mm-hmm.
was the stuff of legends.
Man.
I mean, he just floats up there with a bazooka. He's got a smile on his face. He's taken his mask off, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Like so she can see his face.
Mm-hmm.
Be like, yeah, this is what comes of everything. You know, just
right.
Boom.
Which was interesting because he did not kill her as Char Aznavolt.
He killed her as Casval.
Yeah.
Or Cascal or
Casval,
whatever
right.
it was. Yeah.
That's who was the final blow.
Right.
It was a Zabi, as a Daiku, Zeon Daiku, that killed the Zabis.
Yeah. Yeah, that was epic. As much as I don't like the whole, or no, I keep saying I don't like it. I wasn't as much of a fan of the whole new type thing.
Mm-hmm.
I did. It tugged on my heartstrings a little bit when Amuro comes flying out, and there's a ship full of his friends,
mm-hmm.
and they're all like reaching out and wanting to embrace him and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, he's talking with his telepathic thing to Lala. And he says, you and I can be together anytime, but I have someone to come home to.
Yeah.
And he's talking about his friends, which is interesting because earlier Lala pointed out you don't have anyone to fight for.
Right.
And he thought he didn't because
right.
his mother disowned him and his father was cuckoo. But at the end of that movie, he realized, no, he does have someone to fight for. He does have a family to come home to.
Right.
And that was a really touching moment. And I understand that they needed the whole new type thing to create that connection.
Right.
But
in the fact, because the implication is majority of White Base, not majority, but several members of the White Base were new types.
Right. So he was able to talk with all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting the reactions that they had. Like Sayla was, oh, okay, Amuro's talking to me. That makes perfect sense. I'm going to go do the thing, And Mirai is like, I can hear Amuro's voice.
Yeah.
Oh, what is this? Hamato and Kai were like, hey, did you hear something? Yeah, I did. You think we ought to listen? Yeah, probably. Okay. They're just, it's just like, Did you hear that? Yeah. Okay. It's like they're the Bubba and Boudreaux of the team or something like that.
All right, we have audience who are not from Louisiana. You're going to explain Bubba and Boudreaux. Well, actually, it should be Thibodeau.
Yeah, it's Boudreaux and Thibodeau.
But you need to explain that to people.
I live in North Louisiana, so
It's Bubba.
I'm half Cajun, half redneck, so it's Bubba and Boudreaux. Just, the unassuming, simple-minded guys that, whatever, alligator could go crawling across their front lawn and they go, huh, look at that. That's something. Give me another cold one.
Yeah, exactly.
That was kind of their attitude. They're shooting, war's going on. They're shooting guns and they're like, hey, did you just hear Amuro's voice? Yeah, I did. You think we ought to listen to him? Yeah, probably. Okay.
It was like the king of the hill.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. It's like the funniest part of scripture to me is when Balaam is on the donkey.
Uh-huh.
And God opens up the donkey's mouth so it can speak to Balaam.
Right.
And explain why it keeps going off the track. Balaam is sitting on this donkey, and the donkey looks back and speaks to him.
Right.
His response is not, oh my gosh, a talking donkey. It's, I'm going to argue with it. Not only am I going to be completely fine with a talking animal, but I'm going to tell it why it's wrong and why it needs to ship up.
Exactly.
That was kind of their attitude, is this weird, otherworldly, ghostly thing just happened and we're fine.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, but I mean, like I said before, favorite one of the whole trilogy.
Right.
Because I believe it delivered the most on what I expected it to be.
Right.
Giant robots fighting in space.
Good deal.
The as you mentioned before, the mental chess and the political play was next level.
Yeah.
Something that is an aspect of war that is just as important.
Mm-hmm.
You got to know what to do around the treaty table when you're negotiating, when you're making allies. That's just as important as how well can you shoot a gun.
Oh yeah.
Or swing a sword. It was a wonderful payoff for all of the setup. So I am very much pleased with how it ended.
Dig it. So I got two questions for you.
Okay.
With the series. One, would you recommend the series for people to check out the movies at least?
Having only seen the movies, I definitely would say yes. First of all, they're great. I still want to go back and watch it as a series because, again, it is an info dump.
Oh yeah.
Just stepping out of character a little bit. When I watched this, I had to watch it in like half hour and hour chunks.
Yeah.
Partly because I watched it, after the kids went to bed and I kept falling asleep.
Yeah.
Not because it wasn't interesting, but
there were times I had to rewind just to catch what things were being said at times.
Yes.
Because there's so much being dumped into us.
Right.
And we're watching it subtitled. We're not even like that adds a whole other level to it.
Right. Yeah.
But there is so much being given to you in 2 hours.
Yeah. So I definitely think, based on just what I've seen, I definitely recommend it. I don't want to recommend something I haven't seen, but I do think that going back and watching it as a series so that you've got it in bite-sized chunks,
right,
and you can kind of process it as you watch it, it would make it more enjoyable.
Sure.
I definitely think I would pick up on more things. Like there were a couple of things that I just missed because I think things were moving so fast.
Yeah.
I missed that Cameron went to his station to escape the war.
Right.
I thought he was there already. So that kind of informs the interaction he had with Mirai.
Right.
And other things like that. But,
yeah. And that kind of brings up the whole conversation about, we had the episode with John, and John was very confused to the point that he assumed that the Witch from Mercury, it required you to understand Gundam already. It doesn't. But because it was subtitled, he missed a lot of key things it gave you. Mm-hmm. And so that does bring up an interesting conversation about sub versus dub for some people. Uh-huh. And I want to make it very clear. I am not an elitist. If you can't handle subtitles, please watch the dubbing, which is hard to do some stuff. I don't think there's a dubbing of Zeta or Double Zeta, which is the series that follow this. I think it's all only subtitled. I don't think these movies are dubbed anywhere. Now, the series itself, you can find dubbed. and I recommend that. I think that you'll catch it.
Yeah. I mean, I think John alluded to this. It's kind of a controversy. I prefer dubbed because it just helps with the immersion. You know,
Sure.
I feel like I'm in the story if I understand what everyone is saying. Now, I don't have a problem with subtitles.
Right.
You know, my wife, whenever we watch anything that has an accent in it, whether it be British or German or whatever, she has a slight hearing loss in one ear.
Right.
So she needs the subtitles.
It's because you're too loud.
You know,
If you weren't yelling all the time, Branson, she wouldn't have that hearing loss.
sorry,
I'm playing.
my bad. But no, she needs the subtitles on there. So I've grown accustomed to watching subtitles.
Right.
They don't bother me, but when I don't have the audio as well as the visual, like for example, there were a couple of times where I was writing down notes as the movie was going,
Right. And you miss stuff.
and I missed stuff because I hear what's being said, but it's in Japanese.
Right.
So I have no clue what's being said when I'm looking away from the screen.
I had the same problem. I'm not
You
gonna
know.
lie.
So I like to watch dubbed. And I understand, you're not hearing it in the original language and you miss some of the emotion and that kind of thing. And I agree. I also don't speak Japanese.
Yeah.
So
Enjoy it how you can, man.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. That's good. So we recommend the movies. Recommend the series, obviously.
Yeah.
If you can get a chance to. You are a father
Yes.
of a couple of young men under the age of 10.
Yes.
So my question for you, Branson, is as a father, would you be like, hey, son, come watch this with me? Keeping in track with the other movies you watch and other things
Right.
that you do watch with them.
Right. My oldest, I would, if I could watch it with him
Yeah.
to discuss some of the things they explore. Because they talk about the horrors of war. They talk about two people disagreeing and there not necessarily being a right or a wrong side.
Right.
My oldest, I think it's a little mature for him. My youngest, excuse me. My youngest, I think, is a little mature for him.
Now your youngest was
Yeah.
put context. And we're not talking about like a 15-year-old as your youngest.
No. We're talking about a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Right.
And even with my 10-year-old,
Who is very mature for his age.
he is.
He's strangely mature for his age.
He's very mature for his age.
Highly intelligent young
And I
man.
know a lot of parents say that, but he really is. He really is.
As an objective observer, as someone who has worked with many a child over the years, I can confidently say your son is more intelligent than a lot of kids that are 10, and he's more mature. He has some immaturity to him, as all 10-years are, but he has a level of maturity to him that it's rare in a lot of 10-year-olds.
Right. And so I think there are things that he could wrap his head around. At the same time, he is only 10.
Right.
And I don't want to, just because he is capable of understanding some of these thoughts,
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that I want him to dwell on them.
Sure.
Now, if he were 13, 14, 15, oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. But I think because of his position, he could kind of grasp what was going on. But I would still have to be wary because full disclosure, we have just recently discovered Pokemon
Yeah.
in my house.
Let's go.
And the fact that Ash, the main character, is 10 years old is a big bonus for Branson because it's a hero that's his age,
Right.
and Pokemon's very kiddie, but he, I bought him his first deck today.
Yeah.
And we sat down and played a game. And if you'd have told me back in high school that I would be spending money on Pokemon,
I'm so proud of you.
I would have been
Branson.
like, no way, no, it's just not happening. But I also have to admit that when I told Branson there was a TV show, he said, "Oh, can I see it?" So I looked up the opening credits and let him listen to them.
Right.
And I was singing along with the credits. This TV show that I never watched, but I knew every word of the opening thing.
It was there, man. Maybe you're a new type, Branson.
Oh, baby.
You're psychically linked to Ash Ketchum.
So to answer your question, for my boys, definitely not my youngest. My oldest, I would want to watch it with him so that we could have conversations about some of the things.
Sure.
But it would be pushing the limit of what I think he would be comfortable with.
Totally get that.
So definitely for a sound of mature audience has such a negative connotation to it now. I'm not saying that, but definitely like you need to be in your teens.
Yeah.
So that you can have discussions about the horrors of war.
Right.
That kind of thing.
There's a lot to it. And this is the thing. And we're not putting this out there saying, oh, parents, you need to, no, I mean, every parent's got to make the decision for their own kid as they are.
Yeah. That's the one thing I always say in B's Views and Reviews is, parents, this is up to you. I can give you my recommendations, but ultimately, you're the head of your household.
Exactly. So that's our thoughts on it. Of Mobile Suit Gundam trilogy, the third movie. We liked it. We enjoyed it. We're going to go into our maintenance report here in a second. But at the end of our maintenance report, Branson's going on and choose his own adventure. And we're going to decide where we're going for the next Gundam, whatever we're doing, because we're done with this particular Mobile Suit Gundam series.
Yes.
So a couple options we got come down. If you want to know what that is, you can stick around to the end of the podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the maintenance reports.
Now loading the cruise maintenance reports. Reports begin in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gundam Watch. We are entered into the segment of our show where we do the maintenance report.
Let's go.
Where we take some aspect of the Gundam movie or TV show that we have watched and make some spiritual applications to it. Use it to try to teach ourselves some kind of spiritual truth and how we can do our own spiritual maintenance and do some things. So, Dallas, what is your maintenance report for this third movie?
So my maintenance report, I'm coming at it from the scripture that talks about how you train up a child in the way they should go. And when they are old, they will depart from it. And you see that in various ways within this series. And not necessarily in a good way. We talked about earlier about the Zabi family and how you had Degwin who, for whatever reason, assassinated Zeon Daiku and then took over. And at the end of his life, you saw this regret on how he was looking at his children, of what they had become. And at the same time, you have the Zeon kids, Cassilia and Cassivel, and Artesia and Cassivel. And just, putting it out there for you, obviously they weren't raised together.
Right.
But they were raised by somebody. Somebody spoke into their lives, and they had to change. They had to make a decision on who they were going to be as individuals. Mm-hmm. And then you have just everyone you see involved. You have these kids who have been on White Base, and again, the entire crew is made of kids. And what you see happening is them taking on the training and teaching from their crew father. Bright. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it is somebody's teaching your kids. Someone somewhere is teaching them. Now, who's doing it? What are they teaching them? That's really up to you. A child will grow in what they've been taught one way or another.
Right.
And a matter of how you teach them even. And my encouragement for people is to be aware of what you're teaching your kids. And for those of you who don't have kids, be aware of what you're teaching that next generation yourself. Right. You may not be directly a father, but you do have influence in the lives of people. Having served in kids ministry and youth ministry, I've seen this play out. I've seen kids who, they're living destructive lives because their father wasn't there, their mother wasn't there, or they were there physically, but they weren't really there.
Yeah.
Or they were like, well, I'm just going to let somebody else teach my kid. Biblically, the church is not responsible for teaching your child.
Right.
And it's not the job of a teacher at your public elementary or your private school.
Right.
It's not the youth pastor. It's not the community director. It's you, the parent. Mm. Now, in absence of you, somebody's going to step in.
Right.
But who's going to do that? And so, again, my encouragement is parents, be aware of what you're teaching your kid, not just in what you say, but in what you do. Degwin, he taught his kids what to do physically, and he regretted that. Even though I think that he tried to teach them some other mindsets of things, because of how we walk things out, they went a whole, because it's one of those things where the next generation will take things further than you did.
Right.
And they did.
Yeah.
And then again, if you're not a parent, look at who's around you. What are you teaching that next generation? What are you speaking into them? How are you encouraging them or discouraging them? Because you don't think anybody's listening.
Right.
So that's my maintenance report, is just, we need to be self-conscious about who we're teaching and how we're teaching them.
Yeah. That's especially convicting for me as a dad, because I can speak to this. Your kids are watching you 24/7.
Oh yeah.
When you were in front of them and trying to teach them, yes, absolutely. They're also watching you when you don't think they're watching you. They watch you in the way you address your spouse.
Yeah.
They watch in the way you address your friends, your coworkers, how you act a certain way towards people at church, and then the second they walk around the corner, how you talk about them behind their back.
Yeah.
They are very perceptive. Kids in general are very perceptive, and they see things and know things.
Oh yeah.
So that's very convicting for us as parents.
Yeah.
We're always teaching our kids something.
Yeah.
We just need to pay attention to what.
Exactly. It's kind of a personal story. My dad wasn't around when I was a young man. I didn't have a father necessarily. Didn't have my stepdad anymore. Didn't have my dad. So my father figure was a couple of men at my church. And there was one gentleman that I look up to immensely. And my relationship with him has grown to it's in a different place. When I was a child, it was really a father figure. As an adult, he's a father figure, but a friend also, which I think is healthy. That when a child becomes an adult, that's when they can be a friend.
Yeah.
When a child's a child, they're a child. Do
Right.
not be your kid's friend.
Yes.
But as an adult, you can start developing that. But Celeste went out to eat with his wife some months ago, and they're talking about different things. And Celeste brought up the fact that a lot of how I base my marriage and how I treat my wife is based on what I saw him do and how he treated his wife. And it blew her away. She's like, I had no idea. And we're like, this is the effect of you living it out in front of who you have.
You know, I think I know who you're talking about. And at your wedding, the way you would call out for Celeste sounded just like the way he would call out for his wife.
Right.
It had the same, you said, baby love, and it had the same cadence.
Yeah.
It had the same intonation. I was like, I think, yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely imprinted on me a little bit.
Yeah.
Getting emotional over here, guys. So,
Wow.
well, Branson, what's your maintenance report while I wipe my eyes?
We love you, Matt. Mine touches on a little bit of what you discussed. Jesus, when he's teaching, says, what would it profit a man to gain the entire world and yet lose his soul?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of pictures of that come to fruition in this third movie.
Right.
You see, not Dagon, what's his name?
Degwin?
Degwin, who fought for power and control of the Xeon Principality, only to see one son die in battle, another son become a warmonger, his daughter become a master manipulator, and the only other son he had that was honorable in any sense die in a tragic, heroic death. You know, he had what he wanted, but what mattered was gone.
Right.
You see Cameron, who ran away to get prestige in a safe and secure place so he could be the perfect businessman and everything, lost his betrothed.
Right.
You see Shar, who was so obsessed with revenge for his father's death, he had zero relationship with his sister.
Yeah.
Person after person chase after what they thought they wanted, and at the end had absolutely nothing. Contrast that with Amuro, who didn't even want the Gundam to start with.
Right.
He did it because the world was literally blowing up around him and he needed a safe place to hide.
Right.
I mean, you know, but at the end, and it really stuck out in my head when he tells telepathic Lala, he says, I have somewhere to go home to.
Mm-hmm.
I have someone to go home to. He's the only person that walked away from that battle with something that mattered. He had that makeshift family of the crew of White Base, and they're all reaching out for him and welcoming him back once he escapes the base. And that struck a chord with me, that Christ teaches us to not chase after things that ultimately don't matter,
Yeah.
but to chase after things that matter very much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think that's convicting to me, because it's so easy. It's so easy to get caught up in the rat race.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in, you know, I've got to have a good financial portfolio. I've got to have secure finances. I've got to have the latest car. I've got to have the biggest house. I mean, insert it with anything.
Right.
And it can even be good things. It can be, you know, I've got to dedicate so many hours to church service. I've got to do this or do that. And we invest in things that ultimately don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And God, through Jesus, through Scripture, teaches us focus on things that have eternal value.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, teaching the next generation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, showing the love of Christ to your spouse,
Right.
showing the love of Christ to people who have never experienced Christ's love before.
Right.
These are things that are eternal.
Right.
These are things that have eternal value. And Amuro, as much as he wanted to be a good Gundam pilot, he still had his friendships.
Yeah.
He still had those relationships that mattered. He wanted to relate to his father, even though his father was gone mentally.
Mm-hmm.
Wanted to relate to his mother. As much as I make fun of it, he cared about Matilda. You
Right.
know, he was never outright mean to Frau Bao. He recognized there was a friendship there, even though her affections were unrequited. He still treated her with respect. I mean,
Right.
you know, he cared about his family that he had.
Right.
And in the end, he was the only one that actually got anything worthwhile.
Yeah.
Everyone else who chased after things that didn't matter were left wanting and usually dead.
Yeah.
But, you know, so that was something that really stuck out to me in this movie, is the importance of chasing after things that matter, that have eternal value, and not wasting your time on stuff that just fades away.
So good. So how do you determine what is eternal value?
Well,
Because that's great to say that.
well, I mean, obviously God wrote this thing called the Bible.
Right.
But no, thinking on things that have eternal value are, you know, your family, showing the love of Christ to someone, those kinds of things. And the thing is, you can have good things that aren't necessarily what's best for you. You know, you've got a lot of guys who are very active in the church.
Right.
And as you have mentioned, aren't seen at home a lot.
Right.
You know, especially, you know, my heart goes out to guys who are in vocational ministry.
Yeah.
Because there is this expectation of, if you're in vocational ministry, you're, you know, at the whims of the church.
Yeah.
If somebody needs something, you're expecting to just pack up and go.
Sure.
And a lot of good ministers do that. And that's a sacrifice to the family.
Yeah.
I'll never forget one of my mentors. His name's Clifton Rankin. His son had fallen in Sunday school on a stool, and it cut his head open. He had to go get stitches. Now, he ended up fine, but he needed to go get stitches.
Right.
And my dad was chairman of the deacons at the time, and he told Brother Clifton, "I'll take care of everything. I'll take Dixie and Reed to the hospital. You just focus on your sermon. That's okay. I'll make sure that your family's taken care of. Don't worry." And Clifton said, "No, I'm going to be dad today."
Good.
And he hands his sermon notes to my dad and says, "Bobby, you're preaching."
There you go.
So that was one of the first times Dad was in the pulpit.
All right.
But that stuck out to me,
Word.
that he was like, "No, I'm going to be a dad today."
Yeah.
You know, and so that struck a chord with me. So I believe that God gives us relationships for a reason and a purpose.
Word.
And we need to invest in those, and that has more value than how many hours we're logging in at the office.
Right.
You know, no father ever on his deathbed said, "Man, I wish I'd have put in more at the grind, you know,
Right.
wish I'd have been in the office more."
Yeah.
No person has ever been on their deathbed saying, if I could have just worked 10 more years
Right.
and retired later. No one ever says that.
Right.
You know, everyone always says, if I'd have been home more,
Yeah.
if I'd have called mom more,
Yeah.
if I'd have spent more time with my kids, if I'd have, gone on one more date night with my wife. I mean, whatever. That's what they're always after.
Sure.
And I think God puts that desire in our heart.
Yeah. Totally. It's I believe the scripture is seek first the kingdom of God.
Yes.
And you will have to ask ourselves, what does the Lord have for us? And again, there's some good things we need to do, but we have to understand our responsibilities, the role that we have to play in certain things. And there's that balance we have to keep. We have the responsibilities to whatever it is, but we have responsibilities to our family, to God, and all that in between. So good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, Branson's about to choose his own adventure, and he's going to get his on it. But before we do that, Branson, can you tell everybody about the big project you just dropped last month?
All right. So if you've been listening to this show for a little bit, you know that I've been working on an audio drama called Gospel by Gaslight.
Mm-hmm.
The first episode dropped September 9th.
Right.
It's available on Anchor, Google, Apple, Spotify. I think technically it's available on a few other things through those, but those are the big ones. If you go to gospelbygaslightpodcast.wordpress.com, it's got all the info there. It's got episodes you can listen to, but it is a steampunk-esque story about a missionary who goes to a city named Rivenrath, and he is stood against by classical monsters. And when I say classical monsters, I mean the Universal Studios monsters.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like Beethoven and Bach.
No. Like vampires, werewolves. There's a Dr. Frankenstein character. There's a coven of witches. Classical evil.
Right.
And the primary villain has some Lovecraftian influence.
Nice.
There. Thank you, John Harju, again. But like I said, the first episode came out September 9th. Second episode is looking to drop in October.
Right. Which is when this episode drops.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So yeah, by the time you hear this, the episode will probably be out. But it's really a lot of fun. Fun story. I actually intended it to be like a book on tape.
Oh.
It was just going to be me narrating it. And John Harju said, this will make a really good audio cast if you could get some people to volunteer.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So I messaged a few people that are connected with us at Geek Devotions and said, hey, I'm kind of thinking of doing this. If you don't want to, that's okay, because I can't pay you.
Right. This is all volunteer work.
All
folks.
volunteer work. But the response was 100% yes, I'm down. Let's do it.
Word.
And it came together far better than anything I could ever have hoped for.
I'll tell you, the first episode sounded great. I was impressed with your sound design, and everyone who they did their absolute best with the voice acting. It's a great story you've put together. I mean, it's really fantastic, and I'm proud of you as a friend and a brother. And I'm proud to promote this project because it's a great project. There needs to be more people putting out fiction, entertaining stories,
Right.
but from a godly point of view.
Yeah.
The way that it's even if you're not a Christian, it's a really fascinating story to listen to, but it does a great job of also weaving in biblical principles. And I mean, you're upfront. Some people they try to weave in biblical principles and it's just kind of sideways. You're very upfront about it.
Yeah.
But it's not cheesy, in my opinion.
Well,
it's
thank you.
really
Yeah.
well done.
That was ultimately the goal. Was I wanted my hero to be a Christian unabashedly. He prays to Jesus, prays in Jesus' name. But it isn't the old, I'm going to summon down angels and we're going to fight the demons that make you want to steal money out of the offering plate. I want it to be something real. That's where the classical monsters came from.
I like it.
So my hero is unabashedly Christian, but he's, he has to throw the punches. God doesn't bail him out every time he prays. He's got to be present.
Word.
And in future episodes, you'll see that he's got some foibles.
Yeah.
He's got some flaws that he's got to work through. And just because you pray and ask God to step in, that doesn't always mean that things are going to go the way you want.
Word.
It's not going to be peaches and cream. You're going to see the main character's name is Patrick. You're going to see Patrick struggle with some things.
Mm-hmm.
And But like you said, I wanted it to be entertaining while also being unashamedly Christian.
Right.
And, if obviously I want people of faith to enjoy it, but if I could get a non-believer to say, hey, I'm not a Christian, but I think this is entertaining, even better.
Yeah, exactly.
Even better.
Exactly. Good stuff. All right. So make sure you guys check that out. We also invite you guys to make sure you follow us on all of our platforms. Branson, set the course, brother. What is the next trip of the Gundam Watch?
All right. For this series, choose page 8. I have thoroughly enjoyed this world. Like I said, I've enjoyed it's just robots in space fighting. I mean, that just sounds cool. I do not, however, want to get burnout on it.
Okay.
And I know you've shared with me that there are a lot of other series that go into this version of Gundam specifically. And I do want to go back and visit those later.
Right.
But because everything kind of wrapped up in a nice, neat bow with Amuro flying towards his friends and them embracing him, and it's just a happy moment, I feel like maybe that's a good spot to put a pause.
Okay.
And skip off into something else. After careful consideration, I think a fun place to jump into would be Gundam Wing.
All right.
Yeah, because you said this was the first one that went stateside, right?
Right.
That made it popular over here. So
Yeah.
and also, just to be real, we're recording this at Dallas's house, and he has Gunpla, and one of them has like the wings coming out, looks like an angel.
Yeah.
And I am eager to see that kind of a Gundam in action.
All right.
So I say let's go with Gundam Wing next.
You guys heard it. So join us next month. Branson and I are going to be taking the journey through Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, which is what kicked off the Gundam craze here stateside. I'm going to have lots of flashbacks to watching this after school. I may have to watch each episode, have to watch an episode of Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, and then a Gundam episode just to have the full experience of my childhood. So I'm rocking it out. Well, hey, awesome. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Want to hear your thoughts. Did you guys enjoy this episode? Have you enjoyed this series? Let us know. And also, don't forget to check out all of our social medias. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for The Gundam Watch. And make sure you guys follow us on all those things and get in contact with us. We want to do live with you guys. In the link in the description down below, there's a link to the Geek Devotions Discord channel, where which again, this is part of the Geek Devotions podcast network, and we actually have a whole section in that Discord for discussion about Gundam.
Yes.
So come hang out.
And I'm a new fan of the thing, so come and say things so I can talk to people about it.
Because he needs to get it out. Is Mandy enjoying this? Has Mandy seen anything about this?
This isn't her speed.
Okay.
She said this is something that I can do. This can be something that's just me.
All right.
And so we're doing that.
All right, that's cool. I respect that. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, until next time, remember, stay devoted.
Peace and love.